I never thought I'd wake up one morning and find myself enemy number one for a homeowners association I never even signed up for. But life out here by the lake has a funny way of teaching you that just because you keep to yourself, mind your business, and pay your taxes on time, doesn't mean trouble won't find you. Or, in my case, start digging a trench right up to your property line, acting like you invited the circus over for a backyard barbecue. You know what I mean? My name's Thomas Brady, 61, a little too old for this crap, but not old enough to give up. I spent my best years as a Navy man, then a structural engineer, building bridges for people who never knew my name. Built my own dream house with my bare hands. A 3-story home, every detail exactly how I wanted it, tucked under old live oaks with thick St. Augustine grass rolling down to a private dock. No mortgage, no HOA, no rules but my own. Just peace and a wide-open view of Lake Elwood, which is county land, public for anyone with a fishing license and a bit of patience. For years, I thought I'd found my corner of the world where nothing could touch me. The shoreline strip was mine, so I could slip a kayak in at dusk, maybe cast a line, watch the moonlight flicker on the water. Those were the nights that made it all worth it. Nobody cared, nobody bothered me, until this HOA up the ridge, Lakeside Harmony. Yeah, it sounds like a bad jazz album. Decided their world didn't end at their own perfectly trimmed lawns. Suddenly, a group of folks who'd never wielded a hammer wanted to dictate how I lived on land that's been mine since they were still figuring out what side of the toaster to butter. And right at the front of this parade was Karen Guthrie, the kind of woman who could turn a smile into a threat, marching up to my gate with her heels stabbing the gravel and a clipboard clutched like it was a police badge. "Mr. Brady, I'd like to discuss your use of the lake," she chirped, barely glancing at the sweat running down my neck after mowing the lawn. I told her straight, "Your association doesn't own the lake, and my shoreline's mine. Feel free to call the county if you need that in writing." But she just grinned and said, "Access requires approval through our Environmental Oversight Committee. We're offering preferred usage rights for those who invest in the preservation of the ecosystem." Translation: she wanted $500,000 for the right to do what I'd been doing all along, like I was paying ransom to get my own life back. When I laughed, she didn't. "Declining to participate may limit your lake access. We can't be responsible for what happens next." Was that a threat? She only shrugged. "Just a warning. You ever get that sinking feeling in your gut, like you just saw the first dark cloud of a storm that's coming for you, and only you?" I did 3 things. Called the county, no pending deals, just as I thought. Talked to a real estate lawyer, specializes in HOA messes, and set up motion sensors plus a couple of hidden cameras around my property. Even put a GoPro in the birdhouse, pointed straight down the path to the lake, just in case. Didn't take long. 2 days later, a crew showed up in reflective vests, talking about some runoff improvement project for the HOA. They left when I told them to, but a week later, they came back with shovels and survey gear, working a straight line from the HOA's property, curving just enough to trace my border, never quite crossing it, at first. I confronted them, got the usual environmental board approval nonsense. I filmed everything, sent it to my lawyer, and he said just 4 words: "Document everything." This isn't over. By the 3rd day, their trench was creeping closer. Rain fell overnight, and I noticed water trickling right toward my foundation, following the subtle grade like it was built to do exactly that. Reviewing camera footage, I caught 2 workers at dusk nudging the trench closer to my property. One said, "Karen says it needs to get closer." That's when the hair stood up on my neck. I'd seen sabotage before, but not with this kind of smiley-faced, HOA-branded lipstick. Next morning, a glossy newsletter showed up in mailboxes, Karen on the cover, smiling in front of the trench. "HOA launches Green Lake Initiative to save Elwood's shoreline," it said. And there's a quote, "While some residents resist progress, Lakeside Harmony continues to protect the environment." I almost choked on my coffee. She was spinning it, so I looked like the bad guy, like I was the one endangering the lake. But it was all punishment. I called in an old Navy buddy who's now a structural engineer, and he brought a soil hydrologist. Their verdict was brutal. The artificial trench was causing rapid erosion, pushing water straight at my home's foundation. "They're slow cooking your house," my buddy said. 3 days later, after a heavy rain, I found 2 inches of water standing in my basement. Hairline cracks appeared overnight. The sump pump barely kept up, and the garage floor started sloping, tools rolling downhill on their own. I barely slept, not from fear but from the realization. Inch by inch, my house wasn't mine anymore. They'd taken it with a shovel and a smirk. The big storm hit a week later, flash flood warnings all night. At 4 a.m. the sump pump was screaming, water rising past my ankles. I called the fire department, not for rescue, but because I needed a witness. By sunrise, the back porch had dipped 6 inches, the foundation was visibly shifting, and the insurance adjuster who showed up just shook his head. Your policy doesn't cover damages from third-party negligence or deliberate redirection of water. Sabotage, I said. He just smiled politely and left. Repair estimate? Just under $1 million. Not 1 cent covered. So, I met with my lawyer, Curtis Finch, wiry, cold-eyed, a real shark. I showed him everything. The camera footage, the audio of workers moving the trench, and that one beautiful clip of Karen wants it closer. Curtis didn't flinch. We're suing, civil conspiracy, property damage, HOA fraud. But first, we document. We filed requests with the county, the HOA, and the contractors. I hired another structural expert. Curtis found a forensic accountant. And then another HOA letter arrived, blaming me for the lake's erosion and contamination, threatening to petition the county to limit my shoreline access. I laughed so hard I nearly hurt myself. The people who dug a trench toward my house were now blaming me. Then I turned on the local news, and there she was, Karen, on camera, in pearls, spinning the whole thing as a community initiative, acting like she was the hero and I was the villain. Volunteers hammered a Green Lake Protected Zone sign right at my property edge. You're trespassing, I said, filming them. Just enforcing policy, one replied. By then, I wasn't just mad, I was laser-focused. Every bit of rage got poured into building my case. Time-stamped videos, GPS-tagged photos, soil samples, witness reports, every trick I'd ever learned. But the HOA kept working the media, painting me as the problem. So, I decided it was time to go public. My nephew Alex, a digital campaign guy, put together a video with all the footage, the recorded calls, the hydrologist diagrams, and even drone shots showing the trench's path. We posted it online. No accusations, just proof. It went viral. 2 million views in 2 days, local news picked it up, then a national consumer show. Protesters started showing up at HOA meetings. Memes of Karen's teary interview face, photoshopped onto the Titanic, captioned, "Let's all sink together for the community." Suddenly, I wasn't the only one fighting back. The county launched an audit, found 6-figure sums improperly spent on fake environmental projects, all traced to shell companies linked to Karen's family. Curtis filed the lawsuit, malicious negligence, civil conspiracy, defamation. And that's when things cracked on their side. Out of the blue, Bob Sampson, a grumpy ex-plumber from the board, called Curtis and switched sides. Karen banned my backyard barbecue last summer, said beer coolers and propane violated visual codes. This ain't North Korea. He handed over HOA emails and meeting notes, showing they'd planned the trench for a year, counting on my land flooding to force me out. One email from Karen. Either he joins the Harmony Plan or becomes a cautionary tale. That was the bombshell. In court, it was all laid bare. Engineering reports, footage, the email calling me a cautionary tale, Bob's testimony about the barbecue ban. The judge was stone-faced until Bob explained why he flipped. Because I couldn't grill ribs in my own yard. Even the judge cracked a smile. But the real fireworks were in the financial records. The Green Lake Initiative was just a funnel, with funds routed to Karen's brother-in-law, niece, and even her old college roommate's kid. Curtis summed it up. Your Honor, this was a slow-motion hit job, dressed up as sustainability. When Karen cracked, shouting about how I was a parasite who made them look like fools, the judge cut her off, suspended her as president, froze the HOA's accounts, and ordered a full audit. After the hearing, reporters crowded the steps. Someone asked what's next. I just said, maybe I'll finally host a barbecue. Bob yelled, you bring the ribs, I'll bring the beer. Even the crowd laughed. But behind it all, I saw Karen, stiff and broken, watching the empire she built dissolve in the rain. My house, what was left, couldn't be saved. Cracked walls, sinking foundation, black mold creeping in. The bones were ruined. So I filed for demolition, handed the land over to the county for a park, and made sure the shoreline would never be locked down by another HOA. Brady Shores Park, open to everyone. No fees, no clipboards. Karen lost everything. Her home, cars, and most of all, her power. She got indicted on felony charges. The HOA dissolved. A new, voluntary committee took its place, worried more about potholes than patios. Neighbors handed me a thank you check, which I turned over to a legal aid group for people fighting their own HOAs. Last to go was the dock. I kept a plank, carved never back down into it, and left it by the tree. A year later, people still ask about the trench. The video's up to 8 million views. Brady Shores Park is real. Kids playing, dogs splashing, no HOA in sight. And under the welcome sign is a board I hung myself. This land was almost destroyed for power. Now it belongs to peace. Sometimes Bob drops by with a cooler, and we light up the grill. Folks ask if I'll rebuild. I look out at the park, the freedom, the laughter, and just say, nope, this is better. Karen? Last I heard, she moved to Arizona, banned from serving on any board. I imagine her measuring cactus height, dreaming of bylaws. Me, I bought an old farmhouse inland. No lake, no HOA, just a porch, some rescue dogs, and the kind of quiet you can only earn. And that plank from my old dock? It hangs in my new garage, big letters, never back down. Below it, in small print, just for me. So, let me ask you, what would you have done? Ever gone toe-to-toe with an HOA? Or seen a neighbor fight back and win? Was I right to stand my ground? Or should I have just paid up and played along? Drop your stories, your opinions, hell, your best HOA nightmare in the comments. I'm listening, and I guarantee you're not alone.